Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment on this Friday. We begin with that record-breaking heat, which is being felt all across the globe. Yesterday, we literally experienced what could have been the hottest day on Earth. Our planet hit an unofficial record high average 63 degrees. It is the third time we broke that record this week. Many parts of the globe have been dealing with this blistering heat wave for weeks, from the Canadian province of Quebec to the South American country Peru, both of which hit high temperature records this week. And folks in China are also dealing with a string of heat waves. Just yesterday, weather forecasters issued heat advisories as temperatures there soared past 104 degrees for another day. Here in the U.S., cities from coast to coast are trying to beat the extreme temperatures. Heat alerts are in effect for parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas today. But it's not just southern states. The Northeast is also dealing with above-average highs in the 90s. Scientists say this is a sweaty sign of what's to come.
It is warming, and it's the warmest we've ever seen. But also, if you continue on that trajectory, it becomes the coolest years, cool summers that we will experience for the next couple of years.
The heat is also turning deadly. Triple-digit temperatures possibly proved fatal in Death Valley National Park, where a 65-year-old man died in his vehicle without AC. A 57-year-old woman died while hiking in the Grand Canyon. And in South Florida, an 18-month-old toddler died after the child was left in a hot car. We are tracking this dangerous heat all morning. Let's start off with meteorologist Angie Lastman for the latest on these sweltering temps. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. I wish I had some better news for you when it comes to the Southwest, especially considering it's been days and days of these really uncomfortable and dangerous temperatures, and we've got another day of it. Triple digits expected for Phoenix this afternoon. 111 degrees is where we're headed. That goes for Tucson, too. Tucson and El Paso are two spots that we could tie a record high today, both at 107 for El Paso and 111 for Tucson. Elsewhere, Roswell, we're still in the triple digits, and we go into parts of Texas, and we're going to be in the high 90s. That means feels like temperatures will be even higher than that. And if you're looking for a break from the heat in the Southwest, unfortunately, it really doesn't show up all that soon. We're going to continue to be into the triple digits. Look where we are in Phoenix through the next Saturday, Sunday, Monday time frame, 112 each day. And again, this is something that we'll deal with for much of that area through at least the beginning part of our next work week. Now, when we move to the Northeast, temperatures are above normal, too. We're starting off July with some really warm conditions. Places like New York today headed to 86, not all that bad for this time of year, but the heat index will be around the low 90s this afternoon. Boston, similar story there. We'll see mid 90s for what it feels like this afternoon in Washington, D.C., and even warmer than that in Richmond, as it'll feel like 97 degrees. Along the Gulf Coast, even warmer than that. We see the triple digit feels like temperatures for places like New Orleans this afternoon. Panama City heads to 103 for the heat index this afternoon during that warmest part of the day. You're going to want to find AC if you can. Shade is always great. We'll also be needing to follow those same kind of precautions here when it comes to hydrating and staying cool through the afternoon hours especially. This will stretch over the next couple of days too. Parts of the Northeast will kind of start to cool down just a touch. We'll have some rain work in for the weekend that'll help us out just a little bit. And speaking of the rain, there's your satellite and radar picture. You can see it's kind of unsettled along the Gulf Coast this morning. We also have some of these stronger storms that have even prompted a thunderstorm watch for parts of Oklahoma this morning. And that's the spot really through the central and high plains that we're going to watch for the greatest chance to see some of those stronger storms through the day today into the afternoon hours and into the evening hours. There's the system that is going to be responsible for it. It'll continue tracking to the east for tomorrow, and it'll bring another chance for some strong storms. So let's talk about those locations for the strongest of the storms. 8 million at risk. It does include places like Denver this afternoon, Oklahoma City and Amarillo. Same kind of hazards, hail, strong winds, isolated tornado. As you're getting out the door for your afternoon plans on your Saturday, Oklahoma City going to be another place that we'll once again watch for some strong storms. That does extend into Little Rock. Places like Nashville could see some strong storms as well. And as we look ahead into Sunday, we start to get parts of the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic in on this action, and we'll have 46 million people wrapping up their weekend with the chance for some strong storms. So a weekend that you're going to want to make sure you have at least a plan B for any outdoor activities. Maybe something indoors would be a better fit, because we'll also have the heavy rain on top of that, Joe, and that's going to bring the potential for some flooding. So it's, do you want the warmth and the dangerous temperatures, or do you want the flooding and the strong storms?
Exactly. We welcome the rain to cool things down. We just hope it's not too severe.
Exactly.
All right, Angie, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Let's talk now with Professor Lewis Halsey. He is a professor at the University of Roehampton, London. Professor, good to have you with us. So we're talking with you because you shared findings yesterday from a study that focused on heat and heart activity. Now, before we get to your results, can you tell us a little bit about these experiments you ran and how they worked?
Sure, yeah, hello. So quite simple premise, really. We had participants lying down, resting, staying still in a nice controlled kind of temperature of maybe 26 degrees. They're not wearing too much, just enough for their modesty. Measures their we put them in a very high temperature, so 40 degrees C, 50 degrees C, also quite high humidity, and we measured their physiology, we measured their metabolic rate, we measured their body temperatures, and we're making comparisons between that control condition and the very hot conditions, the sort of conditions that sometimes you're seeing in some parts of the US during the summer.
And I think some of the temps you mentioned were in Celsius for the benefit of much of our audience. We'll talk about hitting 104 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. So in your findings, what happens to our bodies when they hit temps in this range? And why does heat have such a huge, even sometimes deadly impact on our bodies?
Yeah, right. So when our bodies are in ambient temperature, so the surrounding environment of over 100 Fahrenheit, particularly when the air is quite wet, quite humid. The problem is our bodies are taking on heat. They're not getting rid of heat, they're taking on heat. And if it's a humid environment as well, then our sweating doesn't work. Human beings are really, really good at sweating. Sometimes we don't like to admit that, but in the animal kingdom, we're brilliant at sweating. But that superpower, the kryptonite to that superpower, is high humidity levels. When it's hot and humid, our bodies just can't dump the heat, which means we just steadily heat up. It's almost like we're cooking. Now, one of the problems that can happen is that if our bodies get hot enough, nerve functioning starts to falter. And if nerve functioning falters to the heart, and that's quite an extreme scenario, but it can happen, the heart stops working effectively, lower oxygen levels in the body, particularly to the brain, and that can be the end of us.
Professor, we know older adults and newborns are more vulnerable to heat. Whenever we have these heat waves, we talk about the importance of protecting seniors, protecting kids. But that is not all. What other groups are at higher risk?
Well, yeah, no, you're right. It's important to reiterate that. Very young children who don't control their body temperatures so well and also can't alert adults to changes in their body temperature, and older people are the most at risk. It's possible that, well, we see some differences. We're seeing some differences in the way that the heart responds to being at high temperatures between the two sexes, so between males and females. I stress that we can't say at this stage whether those differences relate to different capacities in the heat, though they might do. But the fact that we're seeing these differences means that there's more to look for, and we need to be understanding better who is at risk, individuals who are at risk and who aren't at risk when those heat waves hit. But I'll say this, everyone's at more risk of a heat wave if you go from one day, let's say 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and the next day it's 110. If you get a tapering up of temperature through the spring, everybody adapts to some degree. Human beings are very good at adapting to the heat up to a point. If you get that sudden change in temperature, though, then that's when we're more at risk.
Such important research, especially topical right now. Professor Lewis Halsey, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
For days now, we have been covering a mystery at the White House, a West Wing whodunit. Well, now we're learning it's possible we may never get an answer. We're talking about that bag of cocaine that was found in the White House earlier this week. Multiple officials now say it was actually discovered in a cubby near the White House West executive entrance, not the formal West Wing lobby as previously reported. For the latest, we're joined by NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa. Ali, good morning. So White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre called the original location a heavily traveled area. Does this new location change that? What do we know about this area?
Yeah, Joe, we got some more clarity from sources familiar with this investigation on where exactly this baggie was found, but the pool of people who still had access to this new location is still pretty wide. And just to set some context here, there are two entrances to the West Wing. There's one that may look familiar to our viewers. You see sometimes lawmakers stop in front of a set of microphones that are trained in front of that entrance at all times after having meetings with the president in the Oval Office. Members of the press walk by this entrance multiple times a day. And then there's a separate entrance that's a floor below, that's under the main lobby. And that's where these sources are saying that this cubby was located, that this baggie was found. These are both heavily trafficked areas by White House staffers, by members of the public that are having these private tours of the West Wing from these White House staffers. At this point, we don't know. There's no indication that one of these guests was the one who did leave this baggie. But we do know that throughout the weekend, those public tours did continue to go on, Joe.
So, I mean, let's talk about the investigation. Officials familiar with it now say the inquiry, it could be wrapped up by Monday. Just days ago, investigators said it could take weeks. What changed? Does this new location at all help narrow down who may have left this bag there?
So at this point, we know investigators are combing through what they have at their disposal. We know that they're doing some more testing on that baggie. They're testing it for DNA, for fingerprints. They're combing through visitor logs of staffers, of members of the public who were on those tours. They're also looking through surveillance footage. But they're cautioning that even with all of these resources, there's still a very good chance they may not find who actually did this, because this baggie is so small. Remember, they've compared it to the size of a dime, that they say because of this surveillance footage, it's quite possible it won't be detected on that. So they're tamping down expectations, but regardless, going through all of this and with the progress they've made so far, they say that whereas this was originally expected to take weeks, this could be wrapped up by Monday, Joe.
All right, so here's what we do know. This is weird. This is really unusual. Obviously, you never thought you'd be talking about this all week. It's prompting a lot of questions. Is the Secret Service reviewing any security protocol as a result? Does this make them say, hey, we need to do something differently here?
Yeah, this is definitely unprecedented, and members of the White House press corps definitely did not expect to be talking about this week. But at this point, we don't have any indication that this is going to lead to some internal review of Secret Service security protocol, because at this point, we know that this baggie was found during a regular measure of their already established protocol. This was found during a regular routine surveillance of the West Wing on Sunday. And so based on what we know of their security measures so far, it's unclear whether any sort of extra measures would have been able to detect this baggie. We know that White House staffers are repeatedly and regularly drug tested if need be. Anyone entering the West Wing or the White House grounds, for that matter, is subject to metal detectors, similar to an airport, things that would detect any sort of potential weapons, but not necessarily illegal substances. So it's unclear whether this will lead to any sort of changes on that part.
Ali Rafa, proving the White House beat covers a wide range of topics. Ali, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Turning now to a major breakthrough for people suffering from Alzheimer's disease. The FDA has now given full approval for a new drug. It's called Leqembi and is said to slow down the progression of the disease by up to 27%. But the drug does come with some controversy, including a hefty price tag and some serious side effects. NBC News Now anchor Kate Snow takes a closer look at why the medical community is still calling this a huge step forward.
It's the first time a drug meant to slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease has ever been granted full regulatory approval. In a clinical trial involving about 1,800 patients in the early stages of Alzheimer's, the drug Leqembi slowed cognitive decline by 27% over an 18-month period compared to people who took a placebo.
I really cannot overstate how important today is. This is really a game changer for our field.
The drug targets a type of protein in the brain thought to be one of the leading causes of Alzheimer's. John Domek was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at 56. He joined a trial at the Cleveland Clinic, receiving infusions every other week. In the beginning, he and his wife Anne weren't told if it was Leqembi or a placebo, but for the past year, he's been on Leqembi.
I've been on it for a while, and I think it's helped me.
His cognitive function has declined slightly, they say, but not by much.
We get that it's not a cure, but there was nothing when we got our diagnosis, nothing. Now there's something that we can do.
It gives you hope.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Unbelievably. I mean, we had none.
Since John is still in a trial, they're not paying for Leqembi, but the list price is $26,500 a year. Medicare plans to provide coverage as long as a doctor agrees to submit patient data. There are side effects. Trials found a greater risk of brain swelling and brain bleeds for patients on Leqembi, leaving some doctors with concerns.
The risk and benefits are quite disproportionate in favor of risk, and therefore this is not a therapy that patients should really consider taking.
For the Domex, though,
it was go with a drug that might work or nothing. What would you do?
They're traveling to London in August.
Alzheimer's threw us for a loop. This drug has thrown us a lifeline.
Kate Snow, NBC News, New York.
Let's take a closer look at this new drug with NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres. So let's talk about some of the basics here first. How often would patients need to take Leqembi, and are there benefits that are there signs the benefits could increase as time goes on?
So the brand name is Leqembi. The scientific name, the generic name is lecanemab. That MAB at the end means monoclonal antibody. So it's a monoclonal antibody. Think of the same type of things they had during the pandemic if you had COVID, and you can get that as well. It's an IV infusion, and it essentially works with the immune system to help get rid of those plaques, and like they mentioned here in the package, bring that cognition decline down a little bit. And so the main thing is you have to go in every 2 weeks to get this IV treatment, and it's an IV infusion, probably takes about an hour. So the whole trip, 2 to 3 hour kind of trip. Some of these patients don't drive, aren't able to drive, don't have transportation. Every 2 weeks could be a little cumbersome from them. And so that's one of the controversies behind it. And they're looking now at other ways of administering it, potentially ways with injectable pens that you could use at home. And so we'll see where that goes as far as, where the future of this is going to go, and is it going to improve over time. This drug, like was mentioned in the package, is a bit controversial because some experts are saying, the risks aren't worth the benefits. The benefits are so modest that we still need to push forward. But if you look at the progression of the different medicines, this is the one that has shown some benefit at all. And for families, that is a lot of hope.
Yeah, I mean, so despite those risks, do we expect to see a surge in prescriptions for this? I mean, we heard that family there say that they didn't have any hope now, so why not give this a shot?
And I think you're going to see a big surge in prescriptions. You mentioned that 27% decline in the rate of cognition decline. And so in other words, it's not stopping your rate of decline, it's not reversing it, but it's slowing down that rate of decline. And it's the equivalent to giving people 5 extra months of having that ability to know who their families are, being able to talk to people, having memories, being able to do things on your own. And so for families, that is extremely important. For researchers looking at it and scientists looking at it and politicians, everyone else, they're saying, from the outside, it looks like that benefit's modest. For somebody on the inside, that benefit could mean a whole lot of things.
Time is everything.
Exactly.
For so many people. I mean, the medicine's meant for people who are in the early stages. Just taking a step back, big picture, is this giving us hope that we are one step closer to a cure?
It's actually giving us a lot of hope, because if you look at the progressions of the medicines that have come along, they have increased every time to give us, one, getting rid of those amyloid plaques that we know contribute to it, aren't the only cause, but we know contribute to it. And at this point now we get rid of the plaques and improve cognition. There's some others coming down the line, look like they might even be a little bit better. And that's pointing in a direction of getting to that point of a cure. On top of that, the fact that we're having these, that the FDA is approving them and families are using them and getting some success with them, encourages researchers to go out there and really strive to find that cure, that holy grail of Alzheimer's, of ending it, basically.
That's what we're all hoping for. All right, Dr. John Torres, thank you so much.
You bet.
Appreciate having you on with this.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.